From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
The Arraignment, Trial, and Condemnation of Captain William Kidd is from our Trials collection, which is part of the Law Library's Rare Book Collection. We have digitized a subset of the Trials collection that concern trials involving piracy, and that collection, including this trial, is available on law.gov. Captain Kidd was found guilty of murder and multiple counts of piracy in trials held in London, England in 1701. This particular report indicates that it is by J. Nutt. John Nutt was a printer and bookseller who operated out of the Savoy in London, which was a structure situated along the Strand, until it was razed in the early 19th century. Little is known about John, other than he passed away in 1716, but his wife successfully carried on with the family's printing business after his death. While the trial appears cut and dried, the story behind it is anything but. Captain Kidd has often been referred to as the unlucky pirate, but based on research done since his death, he may not have been a pirate at all. Kidd was born in Scotland, but moved to New York in the latter 1600s and was quickly accepted by the society there, especially so after marrying a rich widow. He was even friends with the Earl of Bellamont, who would later become the colonial governor of New York and Massachusetts. Rather than depend on his wife's fortune, Kidd became a privateer on behalf of England. Privateers are private citizens who are granted letters of marque and reprisal, or passes by a country's government that allows them to attack and capture any enemy ships during wartime. As England was fighting France at that time, Kidd was given a letter of marque allowing him to capture any French or pirate vessel he found. Kidd was largely an unsuccessful privateer, and by 1698 he was having difficulty with both his crew, which wanted to attack any ship no matter its origin, and his ship, which was practically falling apart. In fact, Kidd's murder charge stems from a fight he had with William Moore, a gunner on his ship, regarding Kidd not ransacking a becalmed Dutch ship, as Dutch ships were not covered by his letter of marque. These events were popularized by a folk song published in the early 1700s called The Ballad of Captain Kidd, which stated that Kidd, quote, murdered William Moore and laid him in his gore, end quote. But the actual events, as detailed in the trials, appears to be much less bloody. Kidd argued, and his witnesses supported his statements, that Moore was actively fomenting a mutiny and was threateningly sharpening a chisel when he and Kidd began to fight. During the battle, Kidd hit Moore in the head with a bucket, which ultimately led to Moore's death a day later. Finally, in 1698, Kidd and his crew captured a large ship named the Quetta or Cara Merchant, which was flying a French flag and transporting goods under passes from the French East India Company. The captain of the ship, however, was English and argued with Kidd to return the ship and its goods. Kidd and his crew believed that any ship working with passes from the French East India Company was, by association, French, and so they did not. All the iterations of the East India Company were quite politically powerful, so it is no surprise that when word got back to England, Kidd was branded a pirate and a warrant was issued for his arrest. He sent word to his friend and investor, the Earl of Bellamont, that he was falsely accused. Bellamont convinced Kidd to come to Boston with his proof that he had a letter of marque and that the Quetta Merchant was a French East India ship. Unfortunately for Kidd, Bellamont had made a deal with England to return Kidd, so Kidd was imprisoned in Boston for 2 years and then was sent back to England to stand trial. In the meantime, the proof Kidd had sent ahead was lost. In the trial documents we have, you can see Kidd pleading for assistance of counsel and for the evidence he had previously provided, unfortunately to no avail. As such, he goes on to defend himself. In the murder trial, He argues that he acted in self-defense when he struck Moore. With regard to the charges of piracy, Kidd again pleads with the court to provide the French passes, and when they cannot be found, he attempts to cross-examine the witnesses regarding the passes and have the evidence submitted in that way. His attempts at defense are not successful, however, and he was ultimately found guilty of murder and piracy and executed in 1701. Interestingly enough, in 1910, a scholar claimed to have found Kidd's lost proof in the British Public Records Archives, casting doubt on his long-standing characterization as a pirate.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.